Welcome to Friendly Argument with J. Andrew Bernard and Jeremy Jones.
Let's do this.
New stuff,
All the tangents.
some politics, booze,
Some more politics.
enough about Kansas, and lots of cheer scenes.
Friendly Argument is a podcast showcasing conversations that seek common ground across the aisle of American politics, as well as a few laughs. We hope you guys enjoy, and thanks for watching. Hello.
Hey. Oh yeah, that's right. We're starting.
How's it going?
Not too bad. Yourself?
Never better.
Mm-hmm.
First cheers of the night.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So many
Many.
cheering. We should probably have a cheers count. I'm told that Sven...
No more counts.
No more counts. Sven has told us he's not counting anymore. However, we were informed that Gwen is not required to do as much as Sven is.
Yeah.
So we probably need
gotta
equal
even it out.
opportunity interning,
Equal opportunity.
assistanting,
Yeah.
editor / researchering.
Gwen, get on some
research
stuff.
something.
Thank you.
Put it right here. Do it.
Welcome to Friendly Argument. This is J. Andrew Bernard.
This is Jeremy Jones. Well, you're Jeremy Jones.
I'm Jeremy Jones.
Yeah, for our listening audience. Oh no!
So close.
So close. The terrible monster that lives in your vents.
Yeah.
Keeps you so cool and calm. So big week.
Big
this
week.
Ruth Bader Ginsberg died of cancer.
R.I.P.
R.I.P.
One of the greats.
So yeah, that's
So we decided we would jump
Yeah.
into what we should do next as a nation, and what we'd like to see. And I thought, because we touched on this situation hypothetically before,
yeah.
and I was a little concerned about podcasting on it because I thought we felt pretty similarly, but
Yeah, but I think because we mentioned this, like, it happened on Saturday. We're shooting on, or no, it happened Friday night. We're shooting on Wednesday, and so we had seen each other on Saturday, and I was like, hey, we should do this. But because there's been more time, I've gotten to do a little bit of research and kind of like get what the conservative zeitgeist is kind of saying.
Sure.
And so I think I may have shifted my position a little bit. I think my baseline position probably hasn't really changed.
So let's start with where it was, where it is now, and then why.
Yeah. So I think where a lot of the disagreement is going to come, aside from the fact that we're just as a super broken country, or super contentious country right at the moment. So taking that aside, where I think the current political issue regarding this kind of started more back in 2016 with the Senate basically saying we're not going to vote on his initials are MG, I believe, and I'm forgetting the guy's name. Obama's
the Obama nominee?
Yeah, Michael Greenberg? No.
No. So Gorsuch was who was nominated after.
Gorsuch is on this court.
Yeah, he was nominated after the election. So, but I don't recall the gentleman's name. He is from Chicago.
Yeah. The one that they didn't vote on, basically.
Yeah, the one that Mitch McConnell
said we're not
pushed off.
Yeah, pushed off.
So now he's on both sides of that.
So now we're on the thing. So here is, I guess we'll just start with my side of it.
Yeah.
So I think the little bit of research, and at least I say research, listening to what the conservative zeitgeist is saying right now. A Supreme Court nomination has come up 29 times in our history, in an election year. Of those times, let's see, what was it? 19 of those came when the president and the Senate were of the same party, and I believe all but maybe one of those were confirmed. All of those justices were confirmed. Of the 10 times that happened where the president and the Senate were of different parties, only 2 of them were confirmed.
Okay.
So, the latest one being Gorsuch. Or not Gorsuch, Gwen. This is a research question. Who did that? That guy. We'll just call him MG, because I'm pretty sure that's his initials.
Okay.
So, most people not really knowing the history of the Supreme Court, when McConnell was like, hey, we're going to let the American people decide, just bought that as like, oh yeah, that seems like a reasonable thing to do. When precedence just says the Senate doesn't have, like, the president can nominate, but the Senate doesn't have to say yes to it. So him saying, hey, we're going to let the American people decide was him being cute. And it was a bad move, because now we're in the opposite side, and you have a lot of people, particularly Lindsey Graham, who has been on the record saying, if this happens in 4 years, you can hold me to my words and call me a hypocrite, and now people are holding him to his words and calling him a hypocrite. So, yeah, that's a thing. So where I was originally, when we first talked about it, was like, yeah, I don't think I will want the result of it, but I won't feel good about the means we got there. Whereas now I'm like, okay, well, this is another example of Mitch McConnell being cute and screwing us over.
Yeah, I might, switch out the word cute for other words, but yeah. So yeah.
Too clever by half. How's that? Raging assholes, I think, what you want to go for? Or?
No. Just self-serving.
Well,
I mean, that's really.
Yes, I would agree that yes, he is a politician in every sense of the word. I don't particularly. I like his results. I don't particularly care for him.
Yeah. So previously, walk me through your change.
My changes. So my changes, because my original understanding of it was based solely on when I was paying attention in 2016, and it was like, okay, like, this does feel like I was kind of like, okay, this makes at least emotional sense to like, we have the power to stop this. If Clinton wins, we're gonna have to appoint somebody we don't like anyway. But if Trump wins, then we'll get somebody we like. Like, that just made emotional sense. It's like, okay, like, this is a thing we can do. Like, it's not great. Like, I can understand why people would be mad about it. But it was like one of those, like, this at least, like, there was some emotional logic to it. So now when we get to this point, I'm like, oh, hey, like, I feel like fair's fair. We should wait on this. Which is where I was. But now that it's like, now that the information I am aware of has changed, I'm recalculating how I think about it. So, whereas now I'm like, yes, this does make sense. 2016, we should have just been like, no, we don't want to. We don't like it. We have the power. You can cram somebody down after the election, but we don't have to do this, so we're not going to. Instead of being like, no, we're going to wait and see what the American people have to say. It was bad PR versus actually doing anything, air quotes, wrong.
So, if we could go back and change that, you would.
Yeah.
But we can't. We
No,
didn't.
We can't.
We did.
So,
yeah,
so now we have to deal, like, at least the Republican Party has to deal with the consequences of, this was our line 4 years ago. And we're not gonna do that. Like, we're very clearly not gonna do it. So, how do we? What pill do we have to swallow, and how big is it?
So what changed about your thinking? Like,
what changed about my thinking was I thought that I didn't think that our judges I didn't think it was as common of a thing. I thought this was a very rare thing for a SCOTUS nomination to come up in an election year.
Sure.
And it's actually like a fairly common thing. So finding out that, like, okay, this is a thing, and at the end of the day, like, whether it goes through or not is really just based on the dynamics between the Senate and the White House.
Okay.
So I'm kind of like, all right, well, if 2016 was not an aberration but was a fairly regular occurrence, then I was like, okay, that was a dumb PR move.
So, not them, you,
Mm-hmm.
because I I'm on here with you. I respect your opinion. I respect your decision making. I respect your processes. And this is such a clear, change in, Lindsey Graham has used certain words about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That it can look a certain way.
Yeah.
But, sell me how would you get someone behind that this thought process, this
the 180 the 180 on the from the party ticket, or
just
well, here's
it wasn't just purely self-serving then, and it's purely self-serving now. I
would say it's purely self-serving in both cases.
You would not say that?
No, I would say.
Oh, you would. Okay,
but I would say that.
So
I would say any the Democratic Party would also be as self-serving if they were in that. Not to be whataboutism or a comparison. I think this is literally just this is a power politics situation, and I think in every case where this has happened, it's always been a power politics situation. In 2016, because I was ignorant of the fact that this was a power politics situation, I just bought the PR move of it. 2020 Andrew would tell 2016 Andrew is no, that's a bunch of bullshit. They should just be saying, we're just not going to do it.
Yeah. So, do you think... So that's the benefit, I guess, right? You're describing they're going to get the Republican Party is going to get what they want.
Yeah.
In both of those situations.
Mm-hmm.
In your eyes, a benefit.
Yes.
Cost-benefit analysis.
Mm-hmm.
What is the cost?
So, at least to the Republican Party, the cost could be, if this is perceived by the electorate as a just blatant power grab, an unacceptable blatant power grab, then they will lose seats in the House to the point where the Democratic Party would become the majority party.
In the Senate.
In the Senate.
Senate, yeah.
Yeah, in the Senate. And if that's the case, then it's okay, well, you blundered. We blundered there, but and it's the cost of doing business to a certain extent. The argument that
you see it as in some situations you'll use the term dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
In some situations you'll use the term silly, and those are ways that certain rhetoric, when we talk about Trump rhetoric,
yeah,
where I think there's quite a few folks that would call his rhetoric dangerous.
Yeah.
And you were like, he says silly stuff sometimes. His rhetoric is silly. And so, in these sort of in this particular situation, you said a blunder.
Mm-hmm.
It's got the, we're from the Midwest, so we have this aw shucks quality to kind of everything that we say. I just, I don't know. It might be more.
See, I guess I would be a little more concerned about it personally.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the fact that it's there is precedent for this. This has happened before. So the aberration is not 2020. The aberration was 2016.
I think, if you and I raise our hands to who in the electorate cares about that particular issue, I think we would be the lot of it. You know what I mean? I don't think that is particularly in 2020 where...
Yes, the perception is bad. So
yeah.
here's where I am. Maybe this is where our disconnect is, because I'm seeing the reaction to this happening, to Trump nominating someone, which is precedentially a very normal thing for a president to do.
3 in one term?
You have 3 people leave in one term.
But that is not.
And so it's
a frequent occurrence.
No, but a SCOTUS nomination is a lottery. It's a death lottery.
I understand.
There is no control. God willing, there's never any control over
Kennedy
that.
was.
Yeah. So
that was a different situation. Yeah. I think we all know.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying no one goes and starts killing judges off so that you can repack can redo the court.
They can finesse a living one though.
Yeah. Yeah, they can get one to retire. Ginsburg should have retired during Obama. She was, she made her decisions. but she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer at like 74, like 6 years ago. Like, she knew this was coming. But she thought Clinton would win, so she held off.
Yeah, maybe.
So,
or she just, she was self-interested and wanted to stay as a Supreme Court.
Yeah, I mean, that very much could be, but I mean, like, I think it's a pretty easy, it's not a very quick, far jump in logic to say, everyone thought Hillary was going to win. She could do a couple more years, retire during Clinton.
Yeah.
Like, and then, then you get Trump.
I just
I need to...
I'm very reluctant to put those, like, really any words in any dead person's mouth.
That's fair.
But sorry,
it is an assumption. I am sure she has spoken on this matter if we really wanted to. We're not going to make Gwen do that because that just seems... We don't pay Gwen enough.
No.
Yeah. So anyway, back to my original point.
Yeah.
Like, the reason why I'm not as concerned about this as maybe other people would be, yourself and I suspect included, is because this is, as far as I can tell, this is a fairly normal thing. If the Senate wanted to not do it, the Senate didn't have to do it, but it happens that the Republican Party is in charge of the Senate and the White House, so it's one of those, it could just go through, and I'm pretty sure it will because I think they have the votes. And
I think you're right.
Procedurally,
based on the
based off Senate procedure and the Constitution, there's nothing weird going on here.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess do you disagree with that?
No, I don't disagree. But I still think the cost is to the Republic. Mm-hmm. I think the Republican Party and those people that agree with the Republican Party in their judicial feelings will take this W.
Yeah.
But I think we are discounting the cost, and I think the cost is to the union, and I think the cost is
to that point. So the part that I'm scared about with this is, and I need to. This is a place where I probably need to go and find specific examples of, and I'm just going to, because for the purposes of this show, I think we generally tend to represent the zeitgeist and not necessarily the, we're not, until that Patreon equivalent gets up and our job is all right, we're going to go dig in and actually find out where people are saying these things. So that all being equivocated, what I'm hearing a lot is that in response to this, the Democratic Party, particularly Pelosi and Schumer, are threatening to do a bunch of things, which I'll list off here in a moment, that would be incredibly more detrimental to the union.
Yeah, and
that's where I'm well, if that's going to be the case, I feel like the W here in this particular battle, this is a Gettysburg. That could potentially be a Gettysburg issue instead of a, whatever, the one where the South invaded and nearly took Washington, but didn't actually matter.
At the end of the day,
yeah.
Sorry,
it was. I got myself too far deep into a metaphor I didn't know very well. The waters were too murky.
Yes, it's a problem, and I would say it's. I mean, you could draw parallels to the other escalations versus de-escalation situations. This is a problem. Every problem can be viewed as an opportunity. Why not take this opportunity to be hey, so we can do this, and you guys are going to be upset about it, and so we're going to go kind of we're going to kind of give you the double birds, and then you're going to do everything you can to give us the double birds. Neither of us want that. Because we want to put the nation first. We want to put the civilization first. We want to put the people first. Let's see if there's a way we can start to de-escalate this.
So I think that part of I agree with that. I think part of the problem, particularly conservatives / the Republican Party is having at this particular point, is again, and I'm not going to say that this is necessarily my view, though I think I'm very much into this, but the zeitgeist is that the Democratic Party isn't willing to play the let's be nice game anymore. They haven't been, really since Kavanaugh, they haven't been willing to, okay, we're going to all step back from the ledge here. So it feels like every single fight is, is an existential fight for the soul of the nation. Are we going to go the progressive AOC Bernie wing of the chart, or are we going to go with the, I don't know what the, see, I'm trying to find I feel like the other way is like the more moderate, like we're still America, fuck yeah version, but I feel like that's not an overly generous equivalency.
Yeah, and I mean, to be, AOC does exist. Yeah. Bernie does exist. Mm-hmm. And they are...
Kamala Harris exists.
And Kamala Harris exists. But Bernie didn't get the nomination 2 times. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't carry he doesn't carry as much weight as I think you fear he does. And so...
I guess, what's your proof on that?
Two nominations that he almost, I mean, certainly 2016.
Yeah, but like his policies are Biden's policies. Like Kamala Harris ran on a very similar ticket.
And I think this might be a saturation thing. Mm-hmm. Like when you talk about the Republican Party and mm-hmm. say, like, call them moderate, mm-hmm. like, very little about my point of view mm-hmm. that does it look moderate to me, but I don't really speak to that because I believe you have a deeper saturation than I do. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing different factions, and you know what I mean. It looks wider. You see more detail. Mm-hmm. So I'm telling you, as having a little more saturation in the Republican or in the Democratic Party, there's a lot more detail. There's a lot wider spectrum.
I hope that you're right.
And I absolutely. There's so much difference between. I apologize for mispronouncing the name. Genuine. I think it's Omar.
Ilhan Omar.
Yeah, in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. And Biden.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of space. There's a lot of real estate there, and so I think that there is. I think you can. It's probably not as radical as you think, and I'm sure. I know for sure that the Republican Party is not as radical as. I think.
Yeah.
I just don't have the same level of saturation with it. I do try to, look into it when I do see certain things, but I definitely know for sure that I just don't have that knowledge that you do, so I don't, roll my eyes or be an asshole when you say moderate about it.
Well, like I said, I was trying to find an equivalent. So one of the things in the book, the Impossible Conversations book, that I think is applicable here is that one of the rules is let your friends be wrong.
Sure.
So this is I believe this would be an instance where the healthiest thing for us to do and for us to model is we just are both going to let the other person be wrong.
Yeah, but I let them be wrong. Sure. I also think there are things you know more about than I do, and I trust your. I know you're a smart person, and I know you make decisions. I understand you have a process, and so I can allow you to know more than me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Which I kind of like saying better than saying like allowing.
Well, I mean, I guess here's where I think and Sven, go ahead and put a tangent marker up there. Here, I think where the better way to think about it is let your friends be wrong, because in this case, I think this is a place where we're mutually letting our friend be wrong. It's because it allows you to say, no, I'm pretty sure I'm right. Like, it allows you to be, I have all these arguments, but I don't need to, in order to feel like emotionally satisfied, I don't need to blast, we don't need to keep firing, like letting all the cannons go at each other until they're mad at each other. So it's just like, okay, this is a place, like, I understand where I think that, well, here, let's do an understanding conversation. What I think you're telling me is that there are places where we probably have overlapping Venn diagrams of knowledge. But mine is probably an inch deep in certain places. Some places in that Venn diagram, whereas yours is like a mile deep. And
the opposite is true.
Yeah, and the opposite being true. So even though I would think. So sorry, is that a good example of what you're saying? Yeah. Okay, so where I think that the principle may come in is because in my mind, I'm like, well, I don't think my knowledge, where we're disagreeing, my knowledge is like you're just probably still deeper, but I think I'm probably seeing something you may be missing.
Sure.
Because of that, but it's not really worth going into.
Sure.
And so like which is why I think, what was the way you described it?
Deferring. You may know more than me.
Yeah. So I think at least it's emotionally more satisfying because then you don't walk away from the conversation where it's like, okay, I'm giving this gift. I'm letting my friend be wrong because then I don't have to chew on it anymore.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Sure.
So
sure.
I don't know if that's what Bob Sarian or whatever his name is.
Yeah. No. It's
PDB would necessarily say that that's the argument or that's the thing behind it, but I think that's the Andrew explanation of why I think let your friends be wrong is more emotionally healthy.
Check. I think we're going to use this as an opportunity to take a break, and then we'll jump right back in.
Yeah, then I think let's go ahead and go from your side of the what we're looking at it. So
I think we can do that.
Cool. Okay, we are back. Well, we're almost back. Why don't you sit down?
We'll go sit down.
All right. So let's do your skinny on the situation.
So yeah, I think the cost benefit is it's bad for the trying to get another justice up there in place of RBG. So in the spirit of kind of what we were talking about just before this, excuse me,
of the desperately clinging onto each other's arms in the maelstrom, like we will not let this separate.
Well, but yeah, like exactly.
Yeah.
But like you had mentioned, like letting your friend be wrong because you don't want to bring out all the guns and start like that's the same situation that is happening on a more macro scale between the Republican and Democratic Party right now. So this, to me, sounds like an opportunity because they're Republicans are going to try and get this W, and then Democrats are going to they feel treated unfairly, and so they are going to do what they think is unfair. And now you have all the guns out, and everybody's going to it's going to create more stratification. So what I was going to say during this time, what if we modeled for our representatives? Let's try and like, is there a way to get through this? Like, so Mitch McConnell said something interesting. Maybe this can be a jumping off point.
Yeah.
He said something that I thought was interesting. He said, "We will do it this year." This year. Some leeway there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I was like, oh, is that the tightrope we can walk between these two circles to try to find that common ground?
Well, would that be... Like, I don't think that's a terrible idea. I mean, there's some implications, like electoral implications, because like if it comes down to like this is a contested election, like neither side is... Yeah. Both sides are saying we won, one side is saying, hey, you're not counting all these mail-in ballots, and the other side is saying... Yeah, because very few of them are legitimate, or there's it's like 8 states. Well,
I mean, any sort of
situation, like where both sides are there. So it's like then we need those decisions are going to come down to the Supreme Court decision, and so if we don't have a legitimate Supreme Court, aka
we've made a
but we can't.
Well, we have. We've done
so if it comes down as a 4-4 decision, then it's okay. Well, Pence is making those calls, right? And if it drags out past January 6th, 21st,
usually right around there.
Yeah, whatever the January date.
Yeah,
it's then who's the legitimate person who can make that?
Yeah,
is it Pence? I guess if it's done this year, then it does. Then I don't. I guess then what's the difference between now and the election?
But the thing is, I don't think it has to make a huge difference to be an olive branch. Okay, say we follow that down in what Mitch McConnell said in a way that de-escalates as opposed to escalates. So Mitch McConnell, we'll get it done this year. And then he has a meeting with Chuck Schumer. How would you like to see this, Chuck, going? You know what I mean? Because we would like to. This is how we would kind of like to see it. And then then there's this dialogue, and then and this is, if I was a Republican strategist, this is exactly what I'd be pitching, because that it throws it in the Democrats' court, and if they come with something silly, you can be like, psh, we tried, bump them, double birds, and pointing whoever the hell we want, whenever the hell we want.
Yeah.
And then you really look like you tried, or you could actually try. They could actually try, and just allow yourself the ability to be pleasantly surprised by the other side, and then the tensions start going down, stop rising. To me, that seemed like a very. I thought that was what he was signaling. And past performance being the best predictor of future results, I saw it as most likely a strategy, most likely a tactic to look good, to be able to say, "Hey, we tried." But I don't know. Maybe if it's still happening behind the scenes. I'm sure there's like some.
I don't like. I like the idea. I don't think it would be a bad idea. I think the problem is I think it would be very hard for the leaders of the Republican Party, if not the the conservative base, to think that there's any kind of good faith negotiations that can happen.
Sure.
And just to bring up these points, because I mentioned them earlier. And I would have to go and find these talking points from people who matter.
Or from our research intern.
Yes.
Gwen.
So there's been talk, and I think it's coming from Schumer and Pelosi, that if this happens, then if the Democrats take control of the Senate or of Congress, they will add 2 states, kill the filibuster, increase the number of court numbers of judges on the court. The attempt to impeach Trump or Barr was a ploy they were going to try to use to slow down the nominating process, but I'm pretty sure McConnell was just like, I don't think you're going to give us a legitimate thing. The Senate will continue to just do stuff. So I think that one's off the table. And then try to kill the Electoral College, which they can't do the Electoral College because that requires a constitutional change.
Yeah.
So the first 3 are more of the things where it's like
add states
to
the union. Okay. So the filibuster I've heard. I've heard nothing about adding states.
Yeah.
So
that one's like
I want to be a little.
Yeah, like I said, I'm representing the zeitgeist here, but it's a thing I've heard. Well, it's a thing I've heard enough to make me think that's probably happened. But I would want specific instances before I came down on a hard like this is actually a thing.
Yeah, and I want to be. I don't.
This might be more of like this might be more of a media talking point than it is an actual congressional talking point.
There we go. So let's say that.
I'll go with that, but I don't know if that.
Who's the conspiracy guy who yells about gay frogs and stuff? Alex?
Alex Jones.
Jones.
Yeah.
Oh, we share the same name.
Fun thing.
My buddy Jones.
Yeah. So fun thing about the frogs, he was wrong. It's not turning them gay, it's turning them transsexual.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes.
I still think he's a loon, but...
Yeah. But all I'm saying is, I want to make sure... I don't know everything, but there are some things that don't pass the sniff test right away, and it smells like in my mind, an Alex Jones sort of talking point. And so, yes, I have heard some of those.
Yeah.
I have, the 2 that we mentioned, another impeachment, very...
I think that one was shots fired from the hip, and it was... that one I think was deflected. I do believe that there's been lots and lots of talk. Well, the thing I find is, I don't know that the Republican Party does this, but the sense I get is the Democratic Party always yells about the Electoral College when they don't win it. And then and then when they do, they're like, yeah, the Electoral College is fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that regardless of... we discussed the Electoral College when I was in college because it was, it's part of our political system.
Yeah.
So the idea of... I don't know, I've heard a lot of ideas for changing it, and I think we're entirely way too precious with our electoral process anyway, and it's not even in my top 3 things I would change, but I think there's absolutely some adjustments that could be made.
I would probably disagree with you on the baseline of that, but probably maybe in the details we could probably find some agreement.
Absolutely,
Because we need a balance so that Kansas doesn't have to necessarily always listen to what California and New York are telling it to do.
Yeah, and so a couple things, sort of a tangent, but just sort of more like mathematically, there is no fair electoral process.
Yeah,
it just doesn't exist. So just you got to kind of, for better or worse, you got to kind of throw that off the table. You can get more perfect, you can get better, and the best one, but so now it's dealing more with what works for the nation state. You know what I mean? And so with that, you could do absolutely any number of things. You can absolutely make sure that the Kansas voters still count, but that was one of the 5 primary arguments when they were actually implementing and discussing the Electoral College when it was first implemented in the United States. And that one, out of the 5, that was one of the 2 reasons that were still valid. But the other 3 we've really turned on their head.
What was the other one and the other 3?
We will have an Electoral College episode.
Okay.
And because after 2016, I really deep dived with the director of the head of my political science department back in school, because I just had to wrap my head around the whole thing. And there are some things that we can absolutely adjust and still keep it as fair as possible. And because I do think that is a legitimate concern. You do need you need majority rule with respect to the minority.
Yeah.
But here again, now we're if you look at the Senate, it's on its head. It's a Republican dominated, whereas the most populous places, it's an evening out. That's what the Senate was for, to even
it was to give the states some control,
and now
we lost that when the Senate became a popular vote instead of being elected by the actual Congresses of the states. But
so it's gotten a little. We've made some changes that have messed with the Electoral College, and there's room for movement there. But you don't need to kill the Electoral College. You can but again, I'm not afraid of big moves that way.
If they're good moves, then but it's more of, I think at least most people from my side are. I think most people on my side would be willing to move the goalpost, change the fence, tear down the fence and build it up somewhere else. It just has to have a very solid argument for why the fence has to come.
Yeah, and these arguments are everywhere. Well published, peer reviewed, good, solid, ideas. And they don't have an R and D after the name. You know what I mean? It's just earned income tax credit is a way to really get some people that need money, get them treat them fairly in the tax code. And it's a super simple thing. It's already in the tax code. This is such a good idea, but we just underutilize it. So it's just a matter of pulling that level a little harder. And it's a similar thing with the Electoral College. So, but I think we should address campaign finance and districting before that.
Yeah.
By far.
Yeah, those are which is again two highly self-interested issues that are just so chock full of self-interest.
Yeah, and you got you got to make it arbitrary.
Yeah.
You got to make it arbitrary.
Well, but even making it arbitrary is going against the people who have the power to make it not arbitrary, self-interested. So it's
I weep for you. You know what I mean? You shouldn't be able to give yourself a raise. These are just fundamental things that are absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah.
And those particular areas are areas that I think really need to be addressed.
Yeah.
So
how do you get rid of government creep? But that's a different podcast. Going back to where you're
so my hope is that we could. So, okay, you are McConnell. I am, who do I get to be? Pelosi? Schumer? Whoever you want.
Pelosi doesn't matter in this particular case.
Because we're talking Senate?
Because of the Senate.
Okay.
The House doesn't really matter in this particular thing because the power's in the Senate.
So you reach out to Chuck. Mitch reaches out to Chuck. He's like, hey, Chuck, I don't think I can have a good I wanna be able to have a good faith negotiation with you, but I don't think that's possible. I don't. Say what you think, and you would say, like the concerns. What are the concerns?
The concerns.
I won't have a good faith with that.
Good faith thing. The threats given are, as I've listed out, assuming that they've been made, are such that it is likely to, if we're not already on the path, will definitely set us on the path to civil war, at least. Probably not a hot civil war, but at least Texas and anyone who wants to go with them seceding from the Union. Because if you do these things, all of a sudden the red states aren't going to feel like fundamentally feel like they are a part of the government anymore. They're just having a bunch of things crammed on them from top down.
Yeah.
So you don't want this because it'll decrease your guys' power and ability to do things. You think that you tend to use the court as a secondary judicial or secondary legislative branch, and you're potentially losing that. So all those cards on the table, how do we find peace? So I do want to have a good faith negotiation with you. I do want to de-escalate. And so you're sure in this case.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do want to de-escalate.
Because I'm blaming Mitch.
Yeah, I hear you.
I don't think Mitch really wants to de-escalate, but
yeah, we find ourselves in a situation where if we both do sort of the self-interested tit for tat, we lose, we tear at the fiber of the nation.
Yeah.
And to whatever degree is debatable, but I think in general you love this country. I love this country. We don't want to tear at the fiber of it with this tit for tat thing. So if there was, would it be something that we do it sometime after the election, before the end of the year, in that window, or before inauguration, or whatever?
Yeah.
What you tell me how would you feel more comfortable time-wise? And then we can sort of maybe pick through the.
So here's where Andrew's
going
to step back from Mitch.
Okay. Yep. Sorry.
Because I think that Mitch could give like the, hey, we won't vote on this until after the election, but we're going to start our hearings now. Because that gives Mitch everything he wants. It gives him a chance to look magnanimous while still having all of the Democrats scream at probably Amy Cohen Barrett and tell her we'll have Kavanaugh Part 2,
right?
Or the Kavanaugh the sequel, which will make the Democrats look absolute monsters
or heroes. A lot of people, a lot of people weren't, Team Kavanaugh.
Well, that's fine, but they ran him through the grinder over stuff that was proven to be false. Okay, so the five people who accused him, right? 4 of them retracted. They said no, that wasn't true. What's her name? Dr. Stacy, whatever.
Accuser, yeah.
The accuser. No one who she said was at that party confirmed it.
Yeah.
Everyone said we don't know what you're talking about, and her story changed multiple times.
Sure.
So in any court of law, it has been proven false.
Okay. So, don't know. I have a limited experience with victims of assault, but it's. I do have experience with victims of assault. There is. It is difficult for them to. What one of them had said to me, that they couldn't even tell you what happened that night. This was years after the fact. This was not as long as the other one, and it's not as. I know we like black and white. I know we like straightforward. That is not the human mind, and that is not psychology. And so, I don't. a lot of everything that the accuser said was in line with my experience, without getting into any details, because I don't want to state names or anything, but it was in line with a victim.
That could all be true. In fact, I will say that is probably true. That being said, because we still have to look at somebody's reputation, and we have to look at, like, particularly when we are evaluating their like, making judgment on their character. I'm not saying that it was a clear-cut black and white case, but it's a lot more light gray than it is dark gray. Because, like, yes, she could make that stuff up, but you still have to, like, there was enough people to say he wasn't at any party like that.
Sure.
Like, there's enough to say, like, maybe that's what she thinks, but that's not enough evidence to go on to say, yes, he did it. And it was flimsy enough that, like, let me put it this way, like,
sure.
So let's say, I'm trying to think, let's say somebody we both knew
so the reason, so this has, if this was 1,000,000% true, if it wasn't true, I think he wasn't a good nominee because he was divisive, and he was so divisive.
I think every Republican nominee is divisive.
So, I mean, maybe we should be trying to shoot more down the center.
Well, no.
With
Let me
our
rephrase that.
nominees.
I don't think that they are actually divisive. I think they're considered divisive because the Democratic Party chooses to make them divisive.
So, here's why it's the blessing and the curse of the Democratic Party is it's just a diverse tent. But I do think that knife does cut both ways. It's kind of like herding cats. You can't get everybody all going in the same way at the same time. It's very difficult. But also, like, that has to mean something if all of these different diverse groups are just like, yeah, but we actually can get behind no to this.
But if
because
let me, sorry,
so,
I'm going to interrupt you, but my problem with that is, if that's the case, but it's every single Republican one, but the Republican Party can be like, okay, we're okay with most of the Democratic ones. Like, Clarence Thomas was accused of sexual misconduct out of the blue at the last hour. Kavanaugh happened. There was somebody in between them, like the last conservative. Bork was accused of sexual misconduct at the last hour. Like, these people were highly vetted.
Yeah, and I think that
this is like if it's like, okay, every single person we put up had this happen.
Yeah.
Like, people whose character has been lauded for their entire career.
Maybe it would be a good idea to not put nominees forward, regardless of, like, genuinely, like the all that stuff aside, like, their judicial record shows they're not 1,000,000% like on board. Like, Gorsuch is very corporate friendly, more corporations than people. That bums me out. The other people, they tend to, not super duper love everything that has to do with what's considered kind of like women's rights and things like that. And I know you have feelings about that, so I'm not trying to. But maybe because that's half the population, it would be more judicious to put forward judicial nominees that don't do that.
So just make sure, is your assumption that every single woman is going to agree with abortion being the correct thing?
No.
Or because you said that's half the population.
Well, it is.
So the other half of the population disagrees with that. So why would that? I'm confused why it would behoove a party who disagrees with that to not put forth a judge.
So, to answer your question, I'm not saying
not to dig into the abortion issue. I'm confused why one side gets to sit. Let me rephrase that. It feels like you're saying it would be better if we chose people who are middle of the road, but we're defining middle of the road by your standards.
No, not even middle of the road. Just like, anything that is that divisive. Maybe we sort of not put forward people that are particularly one extreme on a particularly divisive issue, because that is, and I mean, I very much think about like corporations versus people, because a corporation versus a person, bro, like versus an individual, that's not a fair fight.
No.
And so Gorsuch, no one, it got talked about very, very little, but that was something that I really thought like, oh, this is a bummer to me. And that is one divisive issue that I particularly find divisive that not many people do. But there are some that are much more widely, like, abortion is the most divisive issue of our time.
Yeah.
So I think that it would be best, like, okay, we know where the hills are where we go to die. Maybe we don't go there. You know what I mean? Like, we try to find those particularly, not because it's your viewpoint, not because it's my viewpoint, but just because it is so, it tears at the fabric of the nation. And I think that we need to be more conscious of that. We need to try to establish some baseline. And actually, I would like to do a podcast about defining, like, hey, here, you want to be an American? Here we're all going to sign on.
The open-handed versus closed-handed issues?
Maybe, or like, just sort of like I'm an American, I agree to these things. You sign off on that, you get to be
an American.
You know what I mean? And you can go out of bounds, you say you're sorry, you come back, you know what I mean? Like those, like something like that, just because I think that be valuable. But I don't care that it has a D or after it or R after it. I just want to not tear at the fabric of the nation. Yeah, like every chance, like face masks are like.
So I agree with you, but I agree with you in that I don't like that everything is politicized now.
Yeah.
However, I think that there are important fights that shouldn't tear at the. Like, we should go at it like cats and dogs, and then when they're over, we step back. So a Supreme Court justice seat is one of those critical fights because, to a certain extent, that influences the way we go as a country for the next 20 to 30 years.
Yeah,
It is a big
thing.
Thing.
What if they didn't go that long?
I think and this is the thing I think we've talked about, is like, I think every single position in the U.S. government should be termed, and I think that even within the U.S. government, the executive branch. So, like, you don't get to work for the U.S. government your entire life. I'd be even okay with being like, you can't be a postal worker for more than 10 years. Like, if you work for the U.S. government, you can only work for the U.S. government for X amount of time.
Yeah.
The exceptions to that might be, like, I would probably put in place would be emergency service positions. So, like, the military, FEMA, some of like our science stuff, like where it's like, okay, like you don't actually have any real power outside of like protecting us. Yeah. Like, so you guys can work for us for as long as you want, but
totally, I could absolutely get behind that.
Except for maybe generals. Generals need to be termed.
Sure, I'm not opposed to any of that, but I mean, I'm super pro military. I think we do it awesome.
Yeah.
But very early on, and it is not disputed, you can't be a general and run for office. Yeah. You have to give up your. Yeah. That's such a great, like, we just have we do have some very nice stops in the system and very clear delineations.
The U.S. military works for the U.S. population. At the end of the day, that's who the U.S. government, that's who the U.S. military works for. May it always be so. Thank you for your service.
Heck yeah, man. Thanks, guys.
I will consider the President of the United States as the chief plumber, but those guys are actually respectable.
So maybe that would take some of the existentialness out of the fight. I think
that would solve a lot.
You get 20 years or 10 years or 15 years or whatever it is. So what?
Because I like that idea. Before you ask that question, I want to talk about where I like that idea because even like I think what would happen then is the party bosses would start being the people who are trying to do like the power plays, but because they can't be in there just for whatever, like they can maybe be kingmakers, but they're never going to actually get the say because there's enough people who are like, I don't want to listen to you anymore. Like, I'm done in a few years anyway. I'm just going to do what I want. And so it's another
check almost.
It's another check and balance but it's another power diffuser.
Yeah.
Where like the more we can break up who has X amount of power, I think the better off we generally tend to be as a nation. Which maybe is why we have so much of a fight right now, is because we have such high concentrations of power.
Interesting.
And so like now it is like it's literally an existential fight all the time, because whoever has control of the thing has the most ability to influence the entire, like you get to being the majority of the Senate or the House, you're effectively a little king or queen. Maybe a duke would probably be the better way. Like we have a council of dukes.
I should find, there was people very frequently say the United States president is the most powerful man in the world.
Yeah.
But, like, he can't get as much done as he wants.
No.
He has to go through all these different things.
Yeah.
So, we're
Maybe
not, we are surprised, we might be more diffused than you think. I think the power might be more diffused on a historical and an international basis.
I would agree with you on that. I would very much agree with you on that. We are the...
I'm going to start calling these, that was a unplanned break.
Unplanned break. Well, somebody's going to edit it, so they may not even notice. Except for the audio version that we are clearly giving to our Patreon equivalent viewers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But your thought?
Democracy is a snaggletooth, pox-ridden whore. But compared to everybody else out there, she's the prettiest person. She is Miss Universe.
That's right.
So I agree that
employment is the worst thing in the world, except for the alternative.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So I agree with you. However, I think that we're at a point where it's like we could lose what we are.
What are we?
We're a representative democracy with certain foundational ideas that all men are created equal. The ideals, like that's what we are. Yeah, or that's what we're supposed to be. And I think that there's been an erosion of what that means because partially because we don't have an outside threat to unify us or to compare ourselves against, and partially because we're so rich we keep going off and exploring.
Because we can.
Yeah, we go off and explore bad ideas. Like the people who are really rioting, like at least the ones who are getting arrested, they're almost exclusively super rich white kids who are bored. Yeah. And have nothing. Like they have mountain. They have no mountain to climb, no thing to fight, no dragon to slay because it takes being from a fairly nice position of privilege, which I don't like to even use those words because there's a lot of baggage attached to them. But coming from
it's for the Twitterverse.
That's true. That's fair. Okay, that's fair. So coming from a position where, like, you know, I still have a stable home. Like my mother and father love each other very much and are still together.
And they're rad.
Yeah, they are very rad. I was intentionally raised to have the least amount of emotional baggage possible. I was given a college-level education in middle school and high school. I got out of college with no debt. And I have a job. I chose to have a career that is incredibly stable, if not always not necessarily always the most lucrative, but I can always find work.
Yeah.
Where was I going with this? Oh, so that being said, I can understand how, like, when you have all these things, like, it's very hard to motivate yourself to go on to do the next thing.
Sure.
So, like, it's like, yeah, like that drive. Like a lot of billionaires, and I don't think all of them, but a lot of them, like, were super poor growing up, and they're like, nope, screw this. And there's like that thing in the back of their mind. Actually, a lot of rich people were really poor growing up, and there's this thing in the back of their mind where they're like, this can all go away at any moment, and so they don't really spend their money, and they invest it very carefully, and they make it grow. Where it's just like, I've never had that. Yeah. Like, I just I probably will never have that killer instinct, to my chagrin. But
yeah. So I think that we might have come to a little bit of if we were able to set a term limit for the Supreme Court, I think it would de-escalate things a lot.
I think if we set term limits across the board, especially
for the RBG
episode.
Let's. But I understand the sense of it.
Yes, I appreciate that you are limiting it because we start with the topic and immediately explode.
Oh, that should be a T-shirt.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like that we
Here's
do
the
that.
box that we're supposed to stay in.
Oh, this is like just immediately
just and it's
Road
just
Runner
like
style,
a smoke finger, like hand giving the finger to the box.
Oh, that's
the theme.
We're the worst. We're the worst. I love it, but
Thanks, Sven.
thanks, Sven and Gwen.
And Gwen.
But
We appreciate you too, Gwen.
Yeah, I think we.
We at least settled on something that we can agree on.
Yeah.
I think we have very.
But I think the way that we got there, I liked how we modeled it.
Yeah.
I liked how we.
I feel like we butted
did a little
heads.
role play.
Yeah, and I do like that we butted heads against it till we got to a point where it's like, okay, well, this is a place where we can both agree that this would solve the problem.
Well, when you mentioned
This is the part.
forever.
This is the part of the episode where we're patting ourselves on the back.
This is, good job, guys. Yeah, we're great.
Yeah.
We're great.
Yeah. Sorry,
But I think that is something that we could very realistically do, and maybe even realistically see.
Yeah.
In the near future.
Yeah.
So that
you and Ted Cruz agree on that.
Hey,
Small miracles, right?
Yeah, I don't see enemies under my flag. I friends I haven't made yet.
That's
so
fair.
now I made friends with Ted Cruz too.
There you go.
So.
I'm
May
not
wonders
as
never cease.
I'm not as generous as you are. All made in the image of God and therefore respectable. But I guess I would have friends I haven't made yet, and those people who are probably sacks of shits and idiots.
Yeah, but to all of you,
I'm in the third camp. So
that was friendly argument.
we were friends before. We maintain friends during, and we're friends after. There we go. Welcome to Friendly Argument with J. Andrew Bernard and Jeremy Jones.
Let's do this.
New stuff.
All the tangents.
Some politics. Booze.
Some more politics.
Stuff about Kansas. And lots of cheer scenes.
Friendly Argument is a podcast showcasing conversations that seek common ground across the aisle of American politics, as well as a few laughs. We hope you guys enjoy, and thanks for watching.